Namaste, good afternoon. Welcome to the international webinar, Effective Governance for Sustainable Development, conducted by the Institute of Company Secretaries of India in collaboration with ICSI, Middle East, DIFC, and PIO. Welcome, friends. And to start this webinar, I request our past president, Ashish Gargji. You all are aware about Mr. Ashish Garg. He is our past president and currently the president of Corporate Secretaries International. And he is he has achieved many milestones for the institute and for the members. And really, it's honor to have him. I will not take further time. Directly, we will go to Ashish Garg.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome you this insightful webinar on effective governance for sustainable development, organized by the ICSI in association with one of the most dynamic and active overseas chapter of ICSI, that is ICSI Middle East, DIFC, NPIO, Dubai. We are humbled today with the presence of our esteemed guests from both the corporate and academic world. The theme for today's webinar has been categorically chosen to understand the interrelation between good governance and sustainable development. Though the concept of sustainable development has been in existence for decades, it is only recently that it has gained such a lot of momentum. In the quest to be socially, environmentally, and ethically responsible, the disparate economics of the world resorted to strengthening their regulatory regimes. Organizations world over acting in accordance started recalibrating their development process and attuned it to participatory governance, ensuring transparency and accountability. The process, however, is complex as it requires equal participation from all the stakeholders to mediate differences and implement the rule of law. Governments everywhere are formulating framework to achieve the objectives of sustainable development, to corporates to become more responsible towards their environment and society. In India also, we have seen how the BRR, business responsibility reporting, has taken the shape over the period, and it has become mandatory for so many listed companies. The COVID-19 pandemic presented a picture of both tremendous threats as well as that of solidarity. While the sustainable development challenge has been compounded and the lag and frailty of many fronts has been laid bare, the integration of policies and the synergy between policymakers and other stakeholders of respective countries is turning out to be possible meant for the socio-economic fallout. Given that the scrutiny from informed stakeholders is increasing despite the pace of business declining, organizations will have to formulate such policy initiative that would ensure profitability and embrace sustainability while still helping them maintain their relevance. Our role as governance professional has thus become more profound today. As an implementer of good governance practices, a company secretary is expected to help the board in integrating sustainability into board committees' mandate, adding it to the board agendas, offering a checklist for boards and governance committees that are updating their governance models and taking sustainability into account of decision making. We are aware that good governance practices stimulate the performance of organizations by limiting interference, monitoring procedures, and protecting the interest of all stakeholders, which in turn would accelerate the whole recovery process in the economy. Though this webinar today, we are trying to emphasize on how company secretaries across different economies are taking up the responsibility of facilitating the understanding and implementation of the complex process of sustainable development in organizations, along with encouraging stakeholders' engagement while still creating high economic growth. We are already having our 4 overseas chapters, Dubai, US, UK, and Singapore, and we are in process of opening 2 more chapters at Australia and Canada. We should also look backward as well as forward. It looks back to see road traveled, the journeys made, the achievements gained, and the mistakes made. It looks forward to see the road ahead, the journeys yet to be made, the heights to be scaled, and to learn as much as possible from all the past mistakes. And to me, That is what makes any country ideal, not its government alone, not the functionaries alone, and not any citizen by himself. Rather, what makes a country ideal is its zeal, its enthusiasm, its eagerness, and its steadfastness to stand by its principle, to uphold its law in true letter and spirit, to hold strong to its history and its teachings, to protect and conserve its culture and heritage. And while doing so, march forward on the path of economic growth, social development, build upon a sustainable future, and thus become an ideal country. As governance professional, our first question is, what can I do? What is my role? How can I contribute? And most importantly, how can I render my contribution meaningful? Friends, all through our journey of becoming a company secretaries, we eat, sleep, live, and breathe on the concept of corporate governance. Each subject that we have studied, each class that we have undertaken, each skills that we have developed, and each time we undertaken self-upgradation, our sole aim has been to be able to give the Indian corporate sector our contribution. Without much ado, I request our President of ICSI, C.S. Nagendra Rao, to kindly share his thoughts on the theme and about the institute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish
Thank
ji.
you. Thank you, Ashish ji. Yes, just a second, President. Thank you, Ashish ji, for your quite elaborations of our professions and today's topic, which is really very interesting and very relevant in present scenario. Now, I request our President Nagendra D. Rao ji, and before I call him on dais, I will just brief about his little profiles.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. As a president of ICSI, everybody are aware of. Thank you for your kind words spoken on this. Dr. Muhammad Saraf, former Assistant Foreign Minister for Economic and Trade Affairs UAE and former CEO of DP World. Dr. Rangarajan Srinivasan, Associate Professor, International School of Business and Media, Bangalore. Mr. Rijit Sen Gupta, Chief Executive Officer, Center for Responsible Business. CS Ashish Garg, President of CSIA and Chairman of the International Affairs Committee of ICSI. And CS Vijay Kumar Oja, our member, founding member of the ICSI Middle East DIFSE NPO. Very, very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all and esteemed guests and members and professional colleagues from across the world. Once again, a very, very welcoming each and every one of you. I hope that each one of you are doing well and wish for your continued good health and support. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted every aspect of human life and has transformed the social as well as the economic side of the world. Businesses are now committing to protect their people, planet, and profits in equal measures. Diversity, climate change, human rights, and a sound governance culture all have become an integral part of business operations today and are augmenting sustainability. The moment from compliance to governance has necessitated the requirement of higher standards of best practices and professionalism. To leverage this leadership paradigm, ICSI, with its largest membership and student base of company secretaries in the world, is making a continuous conscious effort for the betterment of all its stakeholders. Today's webinar on effective governance for sustainable development has been curated in accordance to reaffirm the fact that good governance of the future is not just about policies, procedures, and policing, but is aligned on the principle of absolute integrity, ethics, and quick decisions. We all realize that to keep pace with the changes in the corporate governance, landscape professionals like company secretaries are expected to persistently upskill their knowledge and competency to fill in that essential strategic role in the organization that supports the board and leadership in pursuit of governance excellence. The role of company secretary has never been more important in raising the awareness on sustainable development and its implications than now, when it has been heightened at a global level recently. Businesses world over are entwining with the environmental and social concern, as it has become evident that organizations with social engagement activities often achieve higher valuation than others. As governance professional, it is thus becoming important for company secretaries to create board awareness on the materiality of the risks and opportunities from sustainability trends, including stakeholders' participation. Technology and globalization have exposed the businesses to risks and financial meltdown. However, the introduction of global governance indices and international governance codes and standards developed by the international bodies has induced a lot of transparency and has led to their adoption by the governing board of individual countries. Countries having revised their regulations are evaluating governance practices of organizations in terms of better disclosure standards, higher board of independence, and protection of shareholders. Therefore, attuning its leadership and corporate culture to new governance code is both unambiguous and inequitable for organizations. These, along with the regular periodic revisions to further advance the governance standards, have become a policy priority to manage the ebb and flow effectively. Driven by this expectation, ICSI has assumed the bigger role of shouldering the responsibility of the regulatory authorities in advocating the framework, policies, and procedures of good governance, culture, and ensuring its implementation in the country through its stakeholders. ICSI is also accentuating its efforts of providing its stakeholders with opportunities sans boundaries by setting up ICSI overseas centers, which are playing a pivotal role in comprehending the professional requirement of the respective countries, along with allowing exchange of views on professional matters with similar professional bodies in those countries. The webinar today is testimony to the two-way flow of knowledge and professional potential and enhancement of the credibility and reputation of the company secretary profession. Though due diligence and regular monitoring have been the handy tool for company secretaries to offset the potential governance risk at the organization level, at the end of this webinar today, we will realize that good governance has a purpose beyond ethical concerns. Company secretaries have learned and practices the nuances of compliances, understood the effectiveness and the importance of the implication of the rule of law and adhering to it, and can thrive on these opportunities shown in by the changing dynamics. I am thankful to our eminent guests today for taking out time from their pressing schedules and consenting to bring in insight from different regulatory regime. I once again congratulate the ICSI overseas centers and ICSI as a whole for organizing many webinars and honing our skill. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Thank you, Nagendra Raoji. Thank you for your very briefly elaborating today's topic and encouraging the members and corporate fraternity and making awareness about company secretaries as well, who are going to play a very vital role for the corporate governance, and that will be very, very useful for sustainable developments. Now, we are proceeding further, and like all our fraternity members and every attendees today is eager to listen our special guest, His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Saraf, and he has taken out his precious time to encourage the company secretaries members across the globe. We are very, very thankful to him. I will just briefly introduce Dr. Saraf. He was the Assistant Foreign Minister of Economic and Trade Affairs at the United Arab Emirates, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation between 2016 to 2019. Before joining the ministry, Dr. Saraf was appointed as Group CEO of DP World when the global port operator was formed in 2005. with the integration of domestic and international arms of the Dubai ports. Dr. Saraf has more than 2 decades of experience in the transport and logistic business. He began his shipping career working at Holland Hook Terminal in the port of Newark, New Jersey. Dr. Saraf joined Dubai Ports Authority in 1992 and rose rapidly through the organization, holding a number of senior positions at the ports of Dubai, including commercial director and deputy managing director, playing a central role in the extraordinary development of Dubai's container terminals at Jebel Ali and Mina Rashid, which combined have become a top 10 global terminal facility. Dr. Saraf managed a major international growth strategy that included the successful acquisition of CSX World Trade in 2004 of the P&O Group in 2006, followed by acquisition of Jafja in 2014. Today, DP World is the 4th largest port operator in the world, with a portfolio of more than 77 marine terminals across 6 continents, including new development underway in India, Africa, Europe, and Middle East. Dr. Saraf led a multinational team of 36,000 people. In 2001, he became the managing director of the newly established Dubai Ports International, the international ports management arm of Dubai Ports. In this position, he oversaw the successful application of Dubai's port management model to its first international operation at the terminals of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, Costana in Romania, and Vizag in India. Dr. Saraf holds degree in business administration from University of Arizona, Tucson, USA. Dr. Saraf awarded an honorary Doctor of Human Letters from the College of Social and Behavioral Science and the Eller College of Management during the 154th commencement ceremony on Friday, May 11, 2018. This is our privilege that Dr. Saraf has find out some time from his busy schedule and present between us to address the thing. Welcome, Dr. Saraf. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you very much for a very, I would say, long and elaborative introduction. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, Mr. Nagendra Rao, Mr. Ashish Garg, immediate past President, ICSI, and President CSIA, distinguished panelists for today's discussions, and members of CS profession joined this webinar across the globe. Thank you very much for inviting me for this event today. I would say it's a great honor and privilege to be amongst you today, especially because you are the world's largest Institute of Company Secretaries. So keep up the good job, and we want organizations like yours to come from Asia or from our neighborhood, I would say, subcontinent and the Middle East or Near East area, because I think time has come that our region, when I talk about our region, I'm talking about the Middle East, subcontinent, and Africa as well, to take the lead, because we have it in us. So thank you very much for inviting us to this event today. The topic of the event, as everybody has mentioned, is effective governance for sustainable development. I will try to give you as much as I can as far as I'm aware of what I've learned. If I take the number of the participants or the members of ICSI, which is over 65,000, I think I'm just a small, minute part of the education that I will be learning from all of you as well. As you all know, sustainable development has 4 major dimensions. There are 3 of them are traditional that all of us know. Number 1 would be the economic development. Number 2 would be social inclusion. 3 would be environment sustainability. The above 3 requires the underpinning of the 4th very important, I would call it, pillar of sustainable development, which is good governance. Without good governance, neither of the above 3, I would call the sustainable development dimensions, would be successful, or I would say effective overall. Therefore, if we want to achieve sustainable development, governance will play a key role in achieving or failing a sustainable development goal. So what do we really mean by good governance? First, it's about values or rules of the behavior, especially in organizations, not only about our politics or government, but about major organizations that are key actors in the success or failure of sustainable developments. And that includes our companies. So when I speak about good governance, I'm speaking about public sector, the government, and the private sector, especially the large organizations. It is clear that there are many types of governments around the world with different rules of behavior or constitutions or sets of principles. It will be absolutely unworkable to believe that there is a one set of politics or rules that can work. For example, will dictate how the SDGs are to be implemented across the globe. So it's impossible to say that there is one rule for everybody, whether it's in politics or in business world. The world's governments won't have it that way at all. Nor is it correct to think that only one way, or if there is, that we will find that one unique way to do it. Rather, we need a set of principles of behaviors for public sector and private sector based on the environment that we are in. So first is accountability. Governments and businesses need to be accountable for their actions. Businesses are in part accountable to markets, but they are also accountable to the court of law. And they need to be accountable to public opinion as well. On the other hand, governments are accountable to their citizens towards the achievement of the objectives they take on. So by accountability, I mean the government will adapt goals and they have responsibility for the following through of those goals and reporting and being clear about the measures that are needed to achieve them on public assessments. Also on the progress or failure of those progresses on those goals. And that should be true across all the variety of political systems across the globe. After the accountability, what comes to mind is the transparency. Once you're accountable, now you need to be transparent about your responsibilities and how you're going to be doing it. We as citizens, we as human beings, we as participants in the market, intent on achieving the SDGs. We can only hold the governments and businesses accountable for their actions if we know what those actions are, know what behaviors are, their behaviors are, and that means that we resist any kind of secrecy, which allows the politicians or the businessmen or whoever, the participants, whoever are the participants are, their behavior behind walls of secrecy. So transparency is a core feature, and the governments of all different political systems have a responsibility towards transparent behavior. Number 3 would be participation. The ability of citizens and stakeholders to participate in decision making, and here that again are many views about it or many ways of participating. Elections are one way of participation, but this is not the only kind of participation. Every country has their own political systems, and within those systems, there must be a participation mechanism available for the people of that country. And similarly, businesses need to confront through institutional means and clear processes and rules with their stakeholders, not only their shareholders, but also their employees, suppliers, and customers. Good businesses has a multi-stakeholders approach. And in some countries like Germany, where there is a principle of co-determination. Workers, even when they are not shareholders, have a formal legalized right and responsibility in participating in decision-making in the company. Fourth aspect of good governance is what could be part of the accountability as well, is the social responsibility. Self-regulate, basically when you talk about social responsibility, whether it's mostly, I would say, is for the corporates. When I look at the corporates, there are corporates who go by the law, and there are corporates who use the loopholes within the law. And this is where I think we have seen many cases where the corporates have used the law and the loopholes within the law to increase their profitability. And we have also seen in certain governments that they say SDG is not our responsibility. It is the response, it has come from the UN. So it's not my responsibility as a local government or a federal government or as a company, because I'm a small company in this part of the world, it's not my responsibility. That kind of behavior must stop. And it is the responsibility of every single individual who lives on this earth. If we take the concept of either a local government or a national government or a business to say that this is not my responsibility to look after the nature or the environment or the river that flows next to my factory, then whose responsibility is it? What is a company? What is a country without people? Unless we look after the people in the community where we operate, where we get our, I would say, livelihood, if you don't look after them, then we are all doomed. And basically, we will be losing grounds as far as the nature and the environment is concerned. Finally, I would say a good governance includes commitment to sustainable development. A government or corporate who says SDG is not our responsibility, as I said earlier, is a no-go. I think it is the responsibility of every single individual to look after the environment, to look after the social well-being of the people and the communities, because as an organization or as a corporate company, unless I look after the well-being of the people, I would not exist myself as a company. So for me, the formation of companies, or corporations, or governments is based on the core component of it, which is people. It is our responsibility, every single individual's responsibility, to ensure that SDGs are abided by and implemented. I know it's a difficult task. Why? Because we got used to the way of life that we have today, but it is also our responsibility, and especially at this forum, I think company secretaries' responsibilities when they are sitting in the boards to remind the board members, because some of the board members usually, and that's the norm in today's world, profitability comes before anything else. I would say the first thing in any company's values list should be people. We value our people. That should be number one. Profitability should come number 2 or 3. If we look after our people, that means that we are looking after our community. If you look after our community, then the profitability on the sustainable basis would come to the companies. And here, I would like to again thank the Institute for inviting me today. And I hope I have added some value to the participants today. And I'm open for any questions if anybody has. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for providing excellent ideas and subject-wise guidance to the CS fraternity and the attendees who all are attending this webinar. Thank you very much once again. And we are in the process to get the questions. Whenever the questions will come, we will share and we will take your input and guidance for the same. So
if I may, I will have to leave, but I will be on my mobile for the next 20 minutes. I can take the question while I'm in my car, if you don't mind.
Sure, sir. Sure,
Okay.
sir. And I have requested members also, if you have any questions which you feel and it cannot be answered today, please send to us and I will try to get it answered by His Excellency and will forward the response.
Thank you again. Please accept my apologies.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
So going forward, we have very excellent keynote from Dr. Saraf, and he has very rightly put out all these points. The responsibilities from the, governance, as we concerned, governance starts from the self itself to go to the family to the, small village. If you say corporate world, then it can go, then it goes to state, country and all. So everything is related with the governance. And excellence in governance, of course, required for the sustainability. We are saying the whole world is now fighting, struggling to sustain. Whether we are watching on newspapers or reading newspapers, watching televisions, we see somewhere the natural calamities. In some part of the world, there are fires due to heat. In some part of world, there are floods, storms. So everywhere there are natural calamities, which is creating havoc and disaster on human life. So this may be the results. Some are the results of which are caused by human being. Some are caused due to natural phenomena. But still we are surviving in this world. And we are trying to make this world a best place to live. So how? That is the governance. We are governing ourselves, our system in such a way that after all these problems, when the governance fundamentals are correct, the problems will be resolved and solutions will be there. And it will be the primary fact for the sustainability. So going forward, now we have our technical experts, very distinguished panelists today and very experienced, knowledgeable. We have Rijit Sen Gupta ji, who is the CEO of For Responsible Business. I will just briefly introduce Rijit Sen Gupta ji. He has over 20 years of experience in various areas of sustainable development policy and practice across Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Rijit Sen Gupta have interest lies in the interfere of business and society, particularly environmental protection, management, consumer welfare, community welfare, livelihoods, SMEs, business regulations, responsible business, and SDGs. He has designed and implemented various programs on these areas in Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia. Currently, while much of his work on sustainable business SDG focused on India, he has been also advocating for greater North-South dialogue on sustainable business SDG at various international platforms while researching and writing on these issues. He has master's degree in agriculture and environment management. He is an alumnus of University of Calcutta and the United Nations University, Tokyo. He is member advisory board of the Trade for Sustainable Development Program, International Trade Center, Geneva, and of the Consumer Information Program of One Planet Network. We welcome Shri Rijit Sen Gupta ji to this webinars, and we are going to listen him. Along with him, I will just introduce our another distinguished panelist, Dr. Rengarajan. Fondly, people call him Renga. He is a FCA and ACS. He is the company secretary and he obtained his PhD in business administration from Aligarh Muslim University with research topic in the area of corporate citizenship and corporate governance. Renga had professional corporate career spanning over 3 decades in the function of finance, legal, government affairs, public policy, corporate governance, etc. He has spent a significant part of his career in the affiliated entities of German MNC Henkel and Japanese MNC Toyota, working in India, Malaysia, and Singapore. In Henkel, he held CFO position at Henkel Malaysia, Singapore, and Group CFO for Henkel India. In the Toyota Group, Renga worked for Toyota Motor Asia Pacific, Singapore, handling the strategic regional government affairs roles till 2016, after which he was company secretary and legal head of Toyota Kirloskar Motor Bangalore. Besides serving as company secretary in company boards, Renga has also been corporate boards as directors for 15 years, serving on the boards of 15 private companies, unlisted and listed entities. He has served on the board of directors of various Henkel and Toyota related industries in Malaysia and India. Post-retirement from the corporate career, Renga is presently Associate Professor at International School of Business and Media, that is known as ISBM Bangalore. He is teaching finance, business ethics, and corporate governance. His special interest falls in the area of behavioral corporate governance, which is the most, now we can say, sorted words and business corporate means behavioral corporate governance is the most sought subject in the coming time. And he is the expert in that. And we will be having, his opinion, his expertise to listen on this behavioral governance as well. So, not spending much time on this, let us welcome Rijit Sen Gupta ji and Dr. Rengarajan on the panel to discuss further. Please welcome. Sir, over to you. You are on mute, Rijit Sen Gupta ji.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Rao, Mr. Garg, and of course, Mr. Vijay Kumar for such a elaborate introduction. On behalf of CRB, we are really pleased to be joining one more event of ICSI. We have been engaging with ICSI on the issue of sustainability and business responsibility. So it's a pleasure, Mr. Rao and Mr. Garg, to be with you once again. I have a slide, and I think I'll just, if I'm able to share my screen. Yeah. Let me just, are you able to see my screen right now?
Yes, yes.
Great. So thanks again. And I think Dr. Saraf has given us sort of a framework where he's spoken about the importance of corporate governance for sustainable development already. So I think what I'm going to do is to expound a little further the points that he's raised and maybe go a few steps towards the operationalization of the principles and the approaches that he underlined. In the 10 minutes that I have, what I felt I would like to do would basically be, I'll start with highlighting the importance of risk and resilience in today's business, and especially referring to the COVID-19 post-COVID-19 recovery, situate the importance of corporate governance, highlight some of the elements of corporate governance again. Dr. Saraf has already highlighted some of them. So just to reiterate them and put them maybe on a screen would help us retain some of those elements better. And then eventually try and talk about a sort of an interface between corporate governance on one side and sustainability, and highlight the link. And then, of course, some concluding remarks. So starting off with the current business environment, and this is something which is this understanding has now emerged, especially amongst the business leaders, that businesses are an integral part of society, and they have to hold themselves accountable for their action and their performance. But not only that, the fact that businesses are part of society and they have to be accountable, but also that businesses are part of a wider and a much larger system of interconnected parts, where and they are connected with these parts, which are the natural, the social, and the human elements. So this understanding is there now in most businesses, that they don't operate in isolation. They are part of a wider system, and there are these impacts and dependency pathways between those parts and how businesses operate, and their efficiency and their growth. And as we are all aware, we are living in a world which has finite resources. So any input or any material that we are using for our or any company is using is finite. So on one hand, while we are dealing with finite resource, on the other side, there is always an increasing demand because of consumer behavior changing, because of our the aspiration to access new markets. So it is a very complex tightrope walk for businesses, and always there is this idea to review and rejig business models and policies. It's not only the challenge of balancing the demand and the supply of resources, but in addition to that, the other layer of challenge that has been added is the challenges in the external environment, whether it is the weather and the extreme weather conditions, whether it is the changing climate and or environmental impacts on society, or even the unemployment issue. And these are all risks which have been identified. And if you look at the Global Risk Report of 2021 by the World Economic Forum, they have already highlighted that these risks are imminent. So the likelihood is very high of these risks. And therefore, as a system, businesses have to be able to cope, adapt, or recover from shocks with that these risks pose to business operations. So that is essentially the concept of resilience. And as you probably, all of you would understand, there is a fair bit of, and you probably would have read it also in newspaper or in journals, that it is, especially in the post-COVID-19 recovery, the importance of resilience, whether it is business resilience or societal resilience, is being talked about. So this is really the framework and the context in which businesses operate. If you try to sort of context that I've highlighted, as I mentioned earlier, business and societal resilience is key for businesses and also institutions, any institution, even a family, to deal with these shocks, to be able to cope, to be able to adapt, or even recover from these shocks. So it is critical that we create resilient institutions, whether it is families or communities or even businesses. And in order to do that, it is important to do the following. Number one, understand and identify the risks, and that can be done by developing policies, institutionalized processes, and accountability mechanisms. Number two is to be able to understand the relationships that various components that exist between the various components of business, between the management, between the board and the shareholders, and even to go beyond shareholders and talk about stakeholders. You might have already seen, even in Davos at the World Economic Forum, which is the rich businesses club, they have been talking about stakeholder capitalism. So moving from shareholder to stakeholder. So these are new narratives, and for people who've been to Davos, these are new language that business is talking about, and these are leading businesses. So if we have to do business with those leading businesses, the business community in India, or even as Dr. Saraf said, this part of the world, the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, we have to learn to strengthen the principles of corporate governance. The last but final point is about communication. Again, being transparent. He also mentioned that point. So communication not only internally but also externally, and of course to support. The business of business is business, right? At the end of the day, so creating opportunity for the business to create that surplus in order to ensure distributional justice. So if you look at all these elements are encapsulated in good corporate governance. These are really the principles of what we refer to as corporate governance, and that brings me to the principles themselves. So what is corporate governance broadly? Sorry. So if you look at the OECD, which is a club of about 35 advanced economies, they have defined the principles of corporate governance in terms of comprising a legal, regulatory, and institutional framework that really supports corporates to deliver on economic efficiency, on sustainable growth, and financial stability. So this is really the rules of the game, the systems which make businesses what they are, how they operate, how they hold themselves accountable, or how the others hold businesses accountable. Very interestingly, 6 principles, and it's very, very easy. It's on the screen, so I don't want to repeat those principles. But if you look through them, and they can be segregated into 3 buckets. Really, the first is about integrity and fairness, to be fair and to be integral. Second, being transparent and to disclose information to stakeholders. And thirdly is about accountability and responsibility to stakeholders. So these are broadly the elements that define a corporate governance and perhaps even good corporate governance. Now, where is the interface with sustainability or sustainable development? If we look around and look at the frameworks globally which are driving or supporting corporates to look at sustainability now and in the future, here are 2 examples that also provides some idea of how corporate governance can be linked to sustainable development and sustainability. The first is the UN Global Compact, a compact of 10 principles. And if you look at the 10th principle, it's here on the slide. Businesses should work against corruption in all forms, including extortion and bribery. So as far as corporate governance or corporate sustainability is concerned, it essentially provides and guides a company with a certain set of values and principles to be able to meet some of the fundamental expectations in society in terms of human rights, in terms of labor, environment, and anti-corruption. Secondly, when we come to the Sustainable Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goal number 16 has 3 specific targets that are very aligned to the attributes of corporate governance. And these are on the screen. We talk about corruption and bribery, accountability and transparency, and also about participation, inclusivity, so on and so forth. So 16.5, targets number 16.5 16.6 and 16.7. Having talked a little bit about the global sort of framework, let us come down to India. ICSI has been a constant and a continuous supporter and contributor to the development of the national guidelines on responsible business conduct. As an Indian, and I'm sure as all of us, we are very proud that the government of India has made this effort. Well, some of us have been involved with this for the last 11, 12 years, on how the government of India developed the framework on what it means by sustainability. So as far as India is concerned, it should be very clear, not just to us, but also to the people that we talk to about sustainability, that for us, the definition of sustainability is provided by the National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct. While CSR, corporate social responsibility, the definition of that is provided by Section 135 of the Companies Act. The definition of sustainability is provided by the National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct. And that should be absolutely clear to all of us. And there should be no confusion amongst any of us. And when we look at the NGRBC, the first principle of NGRBC is about good corporate governance. It's about structures, policies, and processes, application to businesses, including the value chain, disclosure, communication, fair competition, taxation, regulatory compliances, all those elements. There are 9 core elements of this under this principle. So if you look at the NGRBC, the first principle and those 9 core elements under the principle really highlight and underline good corporate governance. Of course, when we come to the on the legal side, this is only mandatory for the top 1,000 companies, as you probably are aware. The NGRBC is the basis for the business responsibility and sustainability reporting framework, which is the national framework for disclosure of businesses sustainability and on good corporate governance as well. So while NGRBC is mandatory for the top, the reporting is mandatory for the top 1,000 companies, the Companies Act is applicable to all corporates. And the Companies Act provides the institutional and the regulatory framework for corporate governance in India, whether it is about boards, processes, independent directors, accounting, auditing, meetings, so on and so forth. Finally, let's just highlight the message and just to conclude the message that we are trying to convey here. It is critical, especially in terms of the post-COVID-19 recovery, to embrace and apply and operationalize a robust corporate governance framework for all corporates, to ensure that and highlight how businesses can drive a sustainable and inclusive recovery. And what does that provide to the business? It provides a framework to guide better business. It provides an opportunity for businesses to understand and mitigate risks. And it also provides and it also supports the aspiration of business to be efficient on a long-term time horizon. So these are some thoughts that I thought might be useful for all of us. And I'm really thankful to ICSI once again for inviting me to this, inviting us to this event. And I'm happy to answer any question if there is any. So thank you once again, Mr. Vijay Kumar, for giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sen Gupta ji, for nice presentations and making clarity on the sustainability requirements and governance role in that. Of course, it's very useful and very enlightened. I request all my attending friends, please post your questions if you have to the chat box below, and we will try to get answers from the experts. In the meantime, we are moving forward and to Dr. Rangarajan. Dr. Rangarajan, we have already introduced. He is a renowned professor now with all corporate experience in the governance and sustainability. We will see his viewpoint on this. Please, Dr. Rangarajan, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oja, for inviting me. Good afternoon. It is my great honor to be in this forum. I thank the ICSI for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Business sustainability is an imperative for any business. UN Global Compact, world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, provide a comprehensive platform for companies to align their business operation and value chains with broader societal and sustainability goals. Basically, the big goals are to end poverty, inequality, and protect the planet at a very high level, or the SDGs. Long time so far, many studies are happening, dwelling into the dimensions of sustainable development. And these studies are putting the order of priority between managerial governance practice, social practice, environmental practice, etc. His Excellency set the tone that these are the various practices which are imperatives. Multiple scholarly studies are out there to argue which is more important. The advent of ESG as a framework, as an integrated framework, has put to rest all these arguments and paved the road for an integrated approach to sustainable development. In the last decade, ESG scores and ESG ratings have obtained very high popularity and is seen to be the main dimension for sustainable development of corporates. ESG use environmental, social, and governance sustainability. As a fallout, we see many changes in the way companies do business already. Of course, we are seeing as of today. I would like to mention two positive examples. Large fossil fuel organization, Ørsted, it was earlier called Danske Oil and Natural Gas, Danish company, has transformed itself into a new green avatar. They have moved totally to renewable energy for sustainable development. India's Reliance Industries recently announced huge green outlays, apparently to woo the ESG investors and to start a transformation journey towards sustainability. So the key question for today, out of the ESG factors, what is the importance of the governance factor for sustainable development? I would bring out some aspects that stresses the importance of the governance factor in NSG for sustainable development. My argument is that governance is probably the most important factor for sustainability. I would like to substantiate this with a few behavioral aspects as to how governance needs to be addressed by companies to ensure long-term sustainability. Let us first talk about the importance of governance. Governance covers a broad range of corporate activities, including board and management structures. I'm talking from a company secretary perspective, as well as policies, standards, disclosures, auditing, compliance, all the rule-based stuff. Governance is a given condition for ESG funds before investors even evaluate the environment or social scores. You can see ESG funds named Clean Energy Fund or Social Index Fund. You can never see a fund called Clean Governance Fund. It's an imperative. Business has a definite responsibility towards environment and society. Business can sustain only if they contribute for sustainability to society. Let me explain this. Business depend on the society for necessary input, money, market, labor. The very existence of business and the future growth of business come from the society. Further, all their consequences of pollution, environmental damage, they are all borne by the society. So as companies use the resources of the society, for the economic interest, they need to take the role of government, which is governance, with reference to that societies, and hence serve the society. This is established, standing. This is well settled through the stakeholder theories in the CSR, modern CSR theories, and this is the bedrock of corporate sustainability. Another aspect I will tell. Sound business ethics is the fountainhead of both the good corporate governance and sustainability, which is in turn resulting in social and environmental goals and thus long-term sustainability. In this context, last Saturday, India's Economic Times published an interview of Dr. Jerry Porus on corporate sustainability. Dr. Porus is a Stanford professor and he is the co-author of Built to Last, along with James Collins. He shared his research finding of interviewing some 1,700 CEOs in US to find out what is the key criteria for a visionary company. His research argued that visionary company has two characteristics for long-term sustainability. The first is their core ideology or the enduring purpose. But the second is important for our topic, which is the essential principles that guide the company behavior. This is all about governance and its basic principles of behavior. Our esteemed speakers already spoke about ethics, fairness, transparency, and so on. We see Industry 4.0 technology in every industry going forward. What does it mean? IoT, iOS, blockchain, cobot. Essentially, every entity will be STAR-I enabled. Smart technology, AI, robotic, and algorithm driven. Basically, that's the direction, probably in the next 10 years. What it means, human intervention is going to be minimal. There's going to be zero paper. Information and transactions of companies are going to be online, real time, available in the public domain. So the concept of, discretionary corporate governance, outsourced corporate governance, probably does not going to exist. You cannot be sustainable if you do not follow governance. Let's take the regulatory environment. It's getting stringent by the day. The privacy laws, the data protection laws can be very demanding going forward. In many countries, we are seeing Facebook is facing data privacy issues. Amazon is exposed to antitrust issues in many geographies. Their long-term sustainability will depend on how they manage governance around these issues and come out unscathed. I am not predicting this, but many research articles already are going their rounds. To manage these things, compliance got to be internalized. Outsourcing idea for compliance without integrating into the company process may be unviable. Just one point on this context is complexity will increase and there will be uncertainty. Managing the business scale in this scenario needs strong principles-based governance in handling the transactions. Let me now proceed to address how governance, especially the behavioral corporate governance, can address the sustainability goals of a company. Behavioral corporate governance is creation of behavioral governance framework. It focuses on the problem of coordination, exploration, and knowledge creation in an organization. It helps in good quality decision-making process. It helps in internalizing acceptable corporate governance, corporate behavior by all the stakeholders within the company. The basic principles of behavioral corporate governance are involuntarily practiced at apex level, especially in some of the well-managed boards, and it is very well evident the superior competitive advantage because of that. Many reputed independent directors bring wisdom to the board. They have 360 degrees of stakeholder views. They contribute to transformation. They see the big picture, but also they look at the small unknown needles of information in huge stacks of known data and then provide solution. These good governance abilities may be there in some, but for sustainability, it is necessary that this good governance behavior get percolated at least down to the senior management level, executing strategies for internalization of governance concepts. And this can very well be done through knowledge and training. That is my strong belief. We have to think of a structured and systematic framework for widely disseminating this governance process. This is besides the practiced rule-based CG process stipulated by the government and the regulators, and all of you esteemed members are all experts in handling that process. The key inputs for a good corporate behavior, governance behavior, are practicing ethics, accountability, transparency, openness, fairness, to name a few, as the basic inputs. When these inputs are consistently applied on the decision-making process in the company, on the control processes in the company, in the corporate citizen processes in the company, over a period of time, it will result in long-term sustainability and shareholder value. My strong belief is shareholders, being the entrepreneurs, can aspire for long-term sustainability only last after all the stakeholders, including government, planet, society, are sustainable. So I believe a comprehensive solution is available, and it is in our hands to, as the, esteemed members of this fraternity, to take this forward and benefit out of it mutually for ourselves and for the company. Lastly, as a concluding note, I would like to share a philosophical dimension of business governance and sustainability. Material business growth comes from increase in sales and profit. When it is achieved ethically, it leads to progress. When consistent progress is demonstrated with morality and humanity, it leads to sustainable success. Thank you for listening to my thoughts. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ringa. You have really elaborated very, very nicely these concepts, and it's enlightened all the fraternity, I believe. I request all my friends and colleagues who are attending this webinar, please raise your questions, which will be answered by the expert panel here. Ringa, I received some questions, so I will just ask this. How do we have a system to audit the ESG that companies will follow?
There are established processes, in my opinion. ESG audit and ESG rating have been around the world for the last 10-15 years, at least. And essentially, my understanding is a simple formula. The ESG audit is achieved when a company is managing its risks in these areas, and more importantly, how they manage this risk. So predicting this risk in environment, society, in governance, and managing it, as long as they have a proper management system of continuous improvement, I believe the audit function is achieved. But it is a separately matured topic in its own way. I trust that gives an idea.
Yeah, at present, this is the buzzword in the corporate ESG, and ESG reporting is making compulsory by the many governments, and it's coming to this region as well. In Middle East, the governments are focusing on economic, social, and governance reporting, and many listed entities are supposed to file this report, and many big entities are getting in good practice to implement this ESG audit as well. Dr. Rijit sir, I will just ask, this sustainability, how do you feel that the board of directors of a corporate has to play a role in continuing the sustainability of the organizations? What governance norms they should adopt?
So thanks for that question. I think there are 2-3 things, Dr. Renga did mention about it earlier, that as far as the board is concerned, the board really creates the framework and for good corporate practices, and also ensures that whatever a corporate does is within on the right side of the law. as far as sustainability is concerned, I think as I mentioned earlier, it is important for us, especially in India, to understand, if we are in the context of India, not especially, if we are talking in the context of India, to understand what we mean by sustainability. And of course, sustainability has three legs. And, as I said earlier, the nine principles of the National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct should be considered as the definition of sustainability. So if that's the framework that we are looking at, social, economic, and environmental, the responsibility of the board is to ensure that there is compliance with the law of the land as something to start with. And that's the minimum requirement. And whether it is the financials and the onus is not just limited to the financial compliance. Compliance on non-financial elements is also becoming extremely important. So from a regulatory perspective, the responsibility of the board is to ensure at least that the environmental, the social legislations, of course the economic legislations are often met, but the social and environmental are sometimes overlooked. So perhaps it is time now for directors, and maybe through the work of bodies like the IOD, etc., that board starts to take more interest on the environmental and the social compliance issues. So that's one possibility. From a purely compliance-related approach. However, it should be, I should highlight here, and perhaps what I'm going to say might be a little provocative. I think our reliance on audit is also something that we'll have to probably shed if we are to look at and think about a more comprehensive impact as far as sustainability is concerned. Audit is important, but the principles and the criteria which are set for audit is often limiting or skewed. And so therefore the audit exercise becomes like a tick box exercise, neither benefiting the auditor because he or she then does not understand or gets to understand the complexity, nor does it help the project proponent. So there is perhaps a need for companies to go beyond compliance and think, and that's something that is already sort of it's already being discussed not only in India but also globally, that there is a need to move beyond compliance and do things which are. I'll give you an example. In our country, it is important to ensure that minimum wages are paid. But minimum wages are survival wages. They often do not offer a life of dignity to workers, right? So there is a conversation of moving towards living wage. But you can't transform. I mean, in India, there is some level of difference between about 30% to 40% difference between minimum wage and living wage. But you can't transform overnight, right? But if you are a company and you are making a commitment to move towards living wage, you are actually starting on that journey. So companies will have to realize that sustainability is not purely a tick box kind of an exercise. It is important. It is an important strategic tool to strengthen their ability to become world class, to be competitive. Globally, a lot of things are happening, and many of the Indian companies, in even the ones which have the wherewithal to embrace sustainability, are not doing enough. And perhaps that's because the business case is not very clear to them. I think it is the responsibility of all of us, sustainability professionals, ICSI, to highlight the business case for sustainability. because at the end of the day, it is going to be business, and even the board is going to look at your financials first before they go into looking at the sort of the social or the environment. A long answer to a short question, but such was your question.
It's really fine, and I like to listen from Dr. Ringa. I think my friends are also willing to listen your views on this point.
No. I have only something to supplement Mr. Sengupta. I totally endorse with him. In fact, principle-based governance is going to be the main criteria the going forward on a sustainability principle. So when the rules and regulations have been increasing day by day, if you look at the corporate scandals are also increasing day by day, the human ingenuity will always stretch their limit. So the rule is a limit, and so it will be stretched. But these are all the limits of the mind, the limits of the company, the limits of the people who are in the company. So I believe that that will certainly be the main criteria for sustainability. That will be my short supplement to Sengupta.
Right. No, absolutely fine. We received another question, and probably this question is for Dr. Saraf. I will read out and I will convey this question to him and get his answer, but I will also try to elaborate on this little bit. The question is, corporate governance and sustainable development are of great significance in the whole world. It is well appreciated, but all the countries in the world have slightly different practices to follow. How would you compare the practices prevalent in Middle East with those prevalent in India? Are there any specific area of practices which could be better accepted in India for implementations? So on this, I will just elaborate on these terms of governance and compliances. This world, particularly the Middle East, is developing. They are developing and adopting new regulations, new laws in compliances with the standard practices, being UAE the part of OECD members. They are adopting good practices from the European and US or from India, wherever the good practices, compliance practices are in place. This area is developing and adopting those to be in proper compliance, whether it is taxations, whether it is governance, and whether it is related with the compliances, which is anti-money laundering laws, ML. The laws are, many laws have implemented recently, which required, UBOs like know your ultimate beneficial owners. And reporting structure for the listed entities are also here. We have the Security Exchange Council, which is monitoring these listed entities. They are providing guiding principles. Corporate governance code has also been issued here, particularly for the financial institutions by the Central Bank of UAE, as well as the Security Exchange Authority here, SECA, they have issued for the listed entities. So things are improving, governance is must, compliance is must for every world. And when all multinationals, as a UAE becoming, door to the Africa, which people are saying that it's the future development. So to enter into Africa, you need to come through the Middle East or probably through UAE, and you need to be very much compliant. You need to be very much governed. So in detail, other answers, I will ask Dr. Saraf's opinion also, and I will share with the audience. In this point, would you like to share your viewpoint, Dr. Ringa?
You mean the comparison between Indian?
Indians, you can just focus on this Indian part. So
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. The corporate governance in India has increased leaps and bounds in the last 2 decades. I would say that. There are a series of committees, by but like Kumar Mangalamela committee and so on, even the latest Kotak committee couple of years before. So this is well enshrined in the country's code of ethics, and the company secretary's profession. I am also taking the pride to say that playing a very, very important role in implementation of this function. Of course, some of the tools are like audits, secretarial audits, and so on. Further to add to that, the Security and Exchange Board of India, which is the regulator, has really strengthened the law in multiple aspects and in multiple dimensions. And it is really doing a very good, very effective mechanism in the country. On top of it, I would think that their detection measures and their latest, use of technologies are really making the corporates to sit up. And we as gatekeepers, I believe, are playing a big role in, compliance and beyond compliance in terms of meeting the spirit of the regulation. So just for comparison, please don't mistake me. I think the advancement in the Indian environment is significantly higher. That will be my comment.
Thanks. Shen Gupta, you would like to add further?
Yeah, no, I think, just to supplement what Dr. Rangaswamy said, we've come a long way since the Satyam scandal in 2009. I think the importance is to not be complacent, but to continue to improve the standard protocols and the processes, and that's probably where the role of ICSI and the company's secretary professionals really come in, and also the as you said, the directors, etc. So I think I'm nothing much to add to what Dr. Enga said, but I think it is important to continue to improve. My area of work is sustainability, and I can probably also highlight that. I think you mentioned this in the last question about the role of the directors, the board of directors. I think there we have a fairly long way to go as far as understanding the importance of sustainability is concerned in business growth and progress, as Dr. Enga mentioned earlier. That is where I think we need to probably do a little bit more work, where we can probably engage much more closely with the directors and the independent directors. Of course, some of the independent directors probably are aware, but I think the board is where definitely there's a lot of conversation at the board level on CSR, because it is mandatory by law for the board to sign off on the CSR policy and the broad framework. But on sustainability and it is critical now perhaps to start engaging the board a little bit more. That would be a suggestion here.
Well, very good. I received another questions from the audience that how we can take up to change the mindset of the business owner from earning just profit to the sustainable development of business. I think this question was also raised during keynote address by Dr. Saraf. He mentioned that the organization should focus on the people first, then the profit, and this question is on this. So it's interesting to listen your view, Dr. Ranga.
Yes, I understand the question. A mindset change is a question to be posed to organizational behavior experts, but I will try my best to think how to answer that question. In fact, I stick to my, the boundary line where I have come from. Mindset will not change if you talk about compliance. People immediately look compliance as a cost. What is the cost of compliance? So much. What is the cost of non-compliance? Fine. Still, I believe today it's lesser than the cost of compliance. If you look at it as a business cost. So the mindset, this is the mindset which I believe the audience question is coming to. I totally agree. And as a company secretary, I also have the pain point at some point in time in my career. So essentially, the question is, all these points I was talking about in the 4.0 is going to be imperative. Whether it is a small company or a large company, it is going to be a transparent company. Nobody can prevent that. When those kind of things happen, those companies which see cost compliance as a cost, unfortunately will not survive or will not be able to survive in the competition. And so the mindset change will happen for those who are proactive through behaviors, trying to be ethical, trying to be transparent, trying to be law-abiding at one level, and the other level, I believe, through experience, because experience will show that they have a pain. If they are lucky, they will survive wounded and they will change. Otherwise, God forbid, their next generation will pick up and then continue. I don't know whether my answer is straight, but this is the best articulation I can make on this point.
No, it's fine. Dr. Sengupta, you want to add something? Sengupta,
yeah, well, first of all, I'm not a doctor. I'm just just call me rigid. I think for a country like India, it is important for businesses to make profits. And I would like to also highlight here that there is we should definitely draw a line, and perhaps a bold line in red, about the difference between profit making and profiteering. Profit making is essential. You have to have surplus, unless the size of the roti, and not cake. I'm talking about roti because we are in India. Unless the size of the roti is big, you can't distribute the roti to feed 5 people, right? So you can't have a small roti and think that roti will. So unless and until you have a surplus, it is not possible for business to survive, right? So I think the first thing is that we will have to, in our head and in the head of the business leaders, distinguish between profit making and profiteering. Much easier said than done. There are systems and there are systems and mechanisms which will make profiteering unviable, and those are coming into action. Whether it is, as Dr. Renga said, whether it is the availability of information. Everybody knows about everything these days, right? Whatever happens in a small corner, in a small mine of a large company in Odisha or in Lakshadweep, it's known to us in within 45 minutes or less. So profiteering at the cost of others, whether it is the environment, whether it is people, whether it is the competitor, is going to become unviable. And I think most of the intelligent business leaders already understand that. And that's also perhaps an advantage that India has. What really restricts them from taking it forward is they don't know how to do it. And that's probably the failure of people like us, that we've not been able to reach out to a large constituency of business leaders. So I think it is a no-brainer now for most of the intelligent business leaders that they have to make whatever profit they make cannot be made at the cost of the environment, cannot be made at the cost of society, cannot be made at the cost of people, right? But they also know that profit can be made by taking all of this into consideration. The question is whether we are able to support that transition. And that probably will reinforce the thinking among the leaders and change and gradually change their approach and their attitude. Mindset, I don't know, but at least approach and attitude. And maybe in the long term, over the next 5-10 years, the mindset as well.
Very well said. Dr. Renga, your behavioral governance, what will be role you are seeing that behavioral governance can play in this sustainable development?
I see behavioral corporate governance is going to play a very big role because this is a supplementary process without any extra cost to the existing, the normative or the rule-based corporate governance process. And then in this regard, I would like to very clearly mention that why I said no cost is depending on the size, the nature and the complexity of the business, it can be followed. What I said was ethics, transparency, compliance, each of it, openness, each of these, fairness, each of these you apply on the decision-making process in the company, on the control process in the company, the perspective control, the physical control, the internal control, external control, and corporate citizenship. Corporate citizenship, just not CSR, but it extends beyond CSR. The different stages of the citizenship a company takes from a participant to a transformative company. Work-life balance, for example, for the employee. Is the company taking care of it? I just give an example to make the point clear. When this type of process happens, it is not going to be a big system. It is the knowledge transfer and the training, at least for, I believe, board plus 1 or 2 levels below the board, because the board is the strategic group and the execution of that is taking place at the operational level, be it the general manager or be it the first layer or the second layer. If these people are having a hang of this, which I would think 90% of it will be known to them. 2 things are missing. One thing is that 10% airline company cannot say that my flights are not accident for 99% of the time. It is something like that. One small case, in their judgment of making an ethical dilemma, of making a call on an ethical dilemma, can add up bit by bit. So the first point is about that filling that 10% gap. And the second point is about their practicing. For example, when I say decision making, there are 2-3 levels in decision making. The quality of the decision making will automatically improve if this is included in the DNA of the decision making process, the ethics or the transparency or that. But today, sometimes it is felt only when there is a wrong decision made in the company. So this is what I mean by that, the quality of the decision making, incorporating it in the DNA of the decision making process in the company. These type of things are available today very much in the public domain. Large universities around the globe are talking about it, and in India, including our business school, we are talking about it. And so these are the things, if the companies take a little bit of an effort, I believe that this will become cost-free over a period of time, but very, very effective additional tool or technique for sustainability.
Very well. Another questions raised by one attendee. He is asking very relevant, because we have these environmental laws in place quite long time in India. So what is the difference between compliance of environmental laws, which is being done since so many years, and corporate governance for sustainable development? Because sustainable developments, as per question I understand, his understanding is that almost compliances with the environmental laws is one of the part of this. So do you think, what is the difference between both of this? Dr. Renga, first I will go with you, then I will go with Rijit.
Sure. I thought you would go with Ms. Sengupta first, being a sustainability expert, but that does not. It's okay. So the question is, you are asking what role environmental laws plays in the governance process. I hope that's
what is the difference between compliance of environmental laws and this corporate governance for sustainability development.
Okay. Compliance of environmental law is the first level, which is, to my understanding, the basic level, because most of the companies today go for certification, ISO 14001 certification. This is an ISO standard defining on the environment, basically compliance with the law and basically responding to environmental concerns, environmental damages. That is at one level. What I was talking was governance is much beyond this particular level of environmental compliance. Today, we know carbon emission is a very big topic globally. Large companies are going for zero carbon. Zero carbon means no carbon in their production, no carbon in their sales, no carbon in their, material. Tesla is making profit just by trading on carbon because of their electric cars. They don't make profit on selling the cars. Actually, whatever little profit they have in their balance sheet is coming from, carbon. This is one example I am saying. Now, can we say that just because I don't follow carbon, I am environmentally compliant? Yes, because you are environmentally compliant by following the law, the CO2 regulations or the noise regulations, etc. But what I believe as a governance process is much, much bigger than that. It is about, keeping, sustainability is what? Keeping the resource for the future. What we received, we give back, or we give back a little bit more. That is the reason I asked Mr. Sengupta whether he will talk, because he is an expert. I am not. I am only a reader. Okay. So this is what is sustainability about. So governance, I believe, is much, much bigger than the environmental compliance laws. In fact, just to add another angle from my thoughts is, it is in the Constitution of India about environmental. Every citizen has to protect the environment. So you don't need government law. If you follow the Constitution, you are a rightful citizen. I'm talking about India, Mr. Oja. You are supposed to protect. But I believe the citizens only let the water into the river, and then the pollution into the river, and expect the NGT to come and pass a law. So this is a very, very mixed and complex topic. But what I believe is, as far as sustainability, governance is the most important topic. And then that is where I told it has to be ingrained in the processes and the DNA of the, the company for the sustainability. My example of Danske, what I told, or Oster, is a very, very, very important. In 2010, they decided we cannot survive because in Copenhagen and in Denmark, they were the biggest polluters of carbon. But at that time, from the ratio of 85%, carbon power, thermal powered power, 15% renewable, they already shifted, they already changed. 85% is now renewable. Just for the example. So if they wanted to follow the country's law, probably this approach they would not have taken. But they have taken the sustainability approach and governance approach. I trust it makes sense, Mr. Oja.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rajat sir, your view, please.
Yeah, I think Dr. Enga has already highlighted 2-3 points. One, I think there was a question about the mindset. So I think the mindset has to go beyond compliance. So that's number one. Number two is that what we try to sort of chant at CRB is to make sustainability everybody's business. So the idea is that sustainability is not anything alien or outside of how you operate. You integrate the elements of sustainability into the core business model. I mean, that's what we do as an organization to help support organizations do that transition. And in many ways that is being done. Traditionally, India has had a fairly strong tradition of frugality and efficiency, etc. So, all of us are sort of we've inherited those tradition mostly, and therefore it is perhaps easier for us to do it. I think what we often the constraint really for us is that we've, for some reason, started to look at the short term. We've lost the patience of developing strategies that will give us, benefits in the long term. So we want to get benefits quickly. We make an investment now. We want the return on investment in 3 months or 6 months or maybe next year. And that kind of a business attitude, acumen, is probably too old-fashioned now, and it is probably going to take businesses down. So these are some sort of elements. As I said, the board has to be, educated on some of these issues. Well, I think the board, many of the boards are already aware of this. They probably have to recall some of these elements which they also perhaps might have practiced or even learned. I think in our sort of exuberance to be in the market and to be able to compete in a cutthroat market, we have often sort of put this values into the back burner. So also the nature of the market plays a role. Not all. Sometimes we do generalize, and I mean that's a problem. We use the term business, we use the term sector. I mean, one sector is different, so different from the other. Energy is so different from transport, is so different from agriculture, so on and so forth. So different sectors have different. The markets are different. So also that pushes sometimes the business leaders to take certain decisions which, if the sector was not so concentrated, perhaps those decisions might not have been taken. But it's important to look at the long term, and also I think Dr. Renga mentioned earlier that how do you measure progress? It's not the bottom line, right? Just the bottom line, and I think that is also something which is catching up with Indian industry. That it's not just your financials that make you successful. You might be successful in terms of your finances, but in terms of your ability to hold people, in your ability to be a good corporate citizen, your ability to be benign with the environment, you are unsuccessful, you are a failure. So those elements are coming up, and I think that kind of an integrated, and there's a fair bit of movement towards an integrated reporting regime, where not just the financial, but also the social, the human elements are also being looked at. And that's probably where, again, I said, the board really has to be educated and supported to move into.
Very well said. Of course, only the profit making is not the only goal of the organizations. It should be known as a corporate citizens, well citizens. Branding, by branding of the corporate is also one of the important aspects nowadays, and where corporate governance towards sustainability is more important, because the people or the stakeholders, when see organizations having all things in place, they have respect towards that corporate, and it is of course developing its brandings. Coming further, I am now having so much of questions, interesting questions, some of them. I will just read out another question which says that, yes, while it is true that corporate governance improving in leaps and bounds, at the same time, the disturbing factor is the corporate fraud, scams, scandals are also on increase. Why this mismatch? Your views, please. So it's a quite relevant because one side we are talking towards effective corporate governance. for the sustainable developments, but these scams, frauds are the hindering factors for that. So why this mismatch? One side we are developing good corporate governance policies, procedures, systems, and another side we are seeing frauds, scams. So please give your opinions, views. Dr. Renga, please.
Sure. I myself, I think, made that point earlier.
Okay.
So I'll try to reiterate the point. Laws are tightening everywhere, rules, regulation, process, but the statistic of the corporate failures are also keep going up. So there are a lot of studies in this. I'll come from a theoretical approach. There was one study which specifically talked about the corporate scandals itself. It was, I think, by one gentleman, Mr. Silveira. I think it's a Brazilian study, if I remember right. I will recall from my mind. I talked about it earlier in the NPIO seminar also. The causes are fundamentally, it is a weak board or poor regulation or excessive concentration of power. But the most important point has been, research says it's only an empirical study, failure of the gatekeepers like, auditors and so on. But this is the fundamental cause, arrogance you can add. But most importantly, the real cause or the intermediate cause, which can be plugged, is the weak internal control, biased decisions, inflated numbers, if you really look at, which talks about the importance of controls and decision making. And these can be addressed. These are all, cognitive bias issues. So as a long-term orientation, if the behavioral factors get incorporated into these, processes, decision-making processes, control processes, till such time, I believe this will happen. I mentioned it, like the human ingenuity always will exceed the boundary. That is the reason humanity has grown so much. So rules are like that. Rules are boundaries to be crossed. This is a hypothesis. I wish I'm wrong, but that is what so far the history and statistics have proven. And that is the reason I talked about, this study actually supported me in making this statement. You address your weak internal controls, you address the DNA of the quality of the decision making in the company. And this can happen through, the basic processes which all the esteemed speakers spoke about it today, the basic inputs like ethics, transparency, openness, and so on. So I believe this is the solution and this is the problem, in my opinion, substantiating from some, existing research documents.
Yeah. Rijit, you like to add something on this?
I think the expert has spoken, so I'll reserve my comments.
I have another questions where your input will be required. As a compliance officer, company secretaries are also appointed as compliance officer, and as per SEBI regulations in India, company secretary qualification is one of the qualifications required for appointed as a compliance officer in a company. So as a compliance officer, when we approach the management to identify risk areas and mitigation plan to avoid or minimize risk, common ensure we receive that it is or will be or external factor for external factors such as change in status, nature, environment, coming competitors, infield, etc. So this is a practical questions. I can repeat again if you want. And further it says that under the circumstances, how a compliance officer, they should be convinced. It's an idea from you experts to a company secretary. Please provide a practical idea how he should take these issues to the management to convince the management the importance of these compliances and how to minimize the risk factors. Yes, please.
Maybe I can add some of my views here. Whether it's a compliance officer or a sustainability officer within a company, I think our experience says that they are all sort of really activists in their own right. within the company, trying to highlight the importance of certain issues which otherwise are not taken seriously, sometimes by the management. So it is also important to present it in a manner which is, which sort of makes it makes the argument compelling. So, for example, if there is a compliance-related matter, perhaps I think one of the idea would be to talk about the cost of compliance as an opportunity, and also perhaps to do some little bit of a research to highlight the cost and also the benefit of a particular action. The benefit might be difficult to compute because there are nuances and there are certain sort of qualitative elements to be looked at, but there are techniques which are available which can help which can help the person, the officer, to assign some figures and then to present it to the management. So I think it is essentially the onus will be on the officer really to do a little bit of research and come up with a compelling argument rather than to hasten and go quickly over to the supervisor or to the management and say this is what we would like to do without due evidence and without the information about the cost and the benefit, both financial and non-financial. It would be difficult to drive a particular reform, let's say, within a particular company. That's been my experience. I mean, our experience.
Yeah, I think you have covered very well. Dr. Ringa, you also want to add on this?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. I think, as Mr. Sengupta put it, it has to be a business case. In order to, business is business. Ultimately, they need a business case. One way of looking at it is in my own, PhD in corporate citizenship area. Just to share an anecdote, it is about a new tool for CSR, volunteering. Okay, employee volunteering. It is found that in addition to social impact, it is also impacting the company in terms of brand increase, reputation increase, in terms of value chain benefits, strategic things, and also it engages the employee more. These are the things companies are looking for and willing to pay in terms of retention of employees, in terms of engaging the enhancing the brand. So these are all few factors that will come into play in order to make a business case or a business enabler. I would think a compliance officer or a company secretary is in a fantastic position because he has the eyes and ears of the board as well as he has the eyes and ears of his colleagues. He is supposed to be a middle to senior management person. And so from a corporate experience, this business case can be established. Like very rightly put, it has to be some kind of numbers and convincing, but this will be the direction, in my opinion, just to supplement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are now reaching towards the end of our time, but still we have some time and some questions are coming from the audience, and quite interesting, quite practical questions are also coming up. One question is regarding, what are the points to be followed by Indian professionals to be successful in foreign countries as governance professionals? This is quite, I think, some students or new company secretary members want to understand from the expert's point of view. So for them, I will just suggest one thing. Our motto of the institute is Dharmam Satyam Vada Dharmam Char. So that need to be, integrated in ourselves. Means we need to speak truth and abide by the rules and law. So this basic principle must be with all corporate professionals, whether it is company secretary and law or any other professionals. If we have to be a good governance professionals, you need to be always honest, speak the truth, and abide by the rules and laws, because you are or we are the persons who are taking care of the governance sides, regulation side, and compliance side of any organization where we work. If your points of view, if you both can, suggest some of the points, so this will enlighten our new members or students of these professions. Doctor, please.
I think you are the right person, and you address this question because you are succeeded outside the country's boundaries very well, so you'll be able to say that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think basically the Indian brain, His Excellency also mentioned about, is highly valued, especially the company secretary profession, because our governance and management skills have increased leaps and bounds, and the institute is doing a great job in terms of proliferation of these particular skills around the world by signing up more centers and so on. So basically, the basic mantras of the hard work and then honest and integrity is going to just be our brands, and with that, any aspiring company secretary will certainly be able to reach out to his goals. This is my thought.
That's nice. Yeah. And of course, Dr. Saraf also conveyed the message to the professionals. We are the torch bearer for the governance, being the largest members of the company secretaries of India. In the company secretarial profiles, there are many other institutions like chartered secretaries, which is now Corporate Governance Institute of UK, Australia, and we have 14 countries association of these company secretaries, which is headed by now our Mr. Ashish Garg. I can readily read it out where these associations are working, like Corporate Secretaries International Association Hong Kong, where we have membership from Australia, Britain, Canada. Corporate secretaries or company secretaries, some places they are known as board secretaries, some places they are known as governance experts. So these big responsibilities of corporate governance is coming on the soldier of company secretaries, and we need to wear it and take it forward for the development of society, for the development of corporate as well as the country and the whole world, I can say, need to be sustainable. I will just conclude few words. We understand. I like to thank you, Dr. Saraf, for his enlightenment to members and the attendees through his practical knowledge, and very well said the requirement of present era for the development of the societies and sustainabilities. I really thank you, Dr. Rajit Sengupta, highlighting the this pandemic issues and how we have handled it properly, how the governance plays role, and how we are improving towards the sustainability. Dr. Renga, you enlightened the audience with your well said behavioral corporate governance points, as well as the governance phenomena in the sustainability and sustainable development. We understand that sustainable development is very much required. And in simple words, it is the idea that human societies must live and meet their needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So what we are today, we need to see that these things are available for the future generations. Whether what we also understand from you experts that the four distinct areas where these sustainable developments is human, social, economic, and environmental, which are known as the four pillars for the sustainability. I also like to thank you once again with the one more point which I add, which like United Nations as the world guardians, we can say, for the development of sustainability, they have created 17 goals for the sustainability, which is like no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water, sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and productions, climate actions, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and last, partnership for the goals. So these 17 goals which have been issued by the United Nations for Sustainable Development Goals, and where the corporate governance is going to play a very, very vital role to achieve this goal. Because without governance, we can't achieve the targets. And it's very, very must, and we need to put in our own life to be the governed by the law, by the rules, and care the nature. Thank you once again. Thank you all for your time. And please do send us the questions if you do have. If we are not able to answer your questions right now, we will like to answer it in further our webinars and further through email as well. Thank you once again. Namaste. Have a nice day. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.